Friday Transportation Seminar at Portland State University. Today we're very pleased to have Professor Chester Liebs, or Liebs, right?
That's good.
Okay, Liebs with us. Professor Liebs is a professor emeritus from the University of Vermont. He now lives in Portland. So for today, we'll talk about the Mamachari bicycles, neighborhood, and the public transportation in Japan. With that, I just give the floor to Professor Liebs.
Thank you very much. That's okay. That's set up for this wonderful TV setup. I want to thank Renata Frampton for giving me great information and orienting me to go here. Professor Wang for inviting me, and Carl Abbott, who put me in touch and introduced me to Professor Wang. How many of you are actually majoring in bicycle planning specifically? Is there? It's part of as part of your studies? Yeah. I've never spoken to a group that is in that area, so I'm delighted, and you can see some of the shortcomings, perhaps, or good points of what I'm going to discuss. Let me begin. In March of 2011, you're all familiar with the terrible earthquake and tsunami that struck the Tohoku region, the northeast region of Japan. This is just one of the many images. This is from Ishinomaki, one of the communities leveled and destroyed by the tsunami. And it was very interesting, among other things, at that time, in my research and looking on the internet, and I found quite a few stories about this amazing woman, an 83-year-old who escaped the tsunami on a bicycle. And to a Westerner, or perhaps even a lot of Americans, probably not Portlanders, which are very bicycle aware, but many parts of this country certainly, wow, you know, my God, 83-year-old rides a bicycle. This is amazing. But actually, what probably the journalist who even wrote it doesn't realize that all her neighbors had bicycles too. She was probably lucky. Because over 80 million people own the bicycle that I'm going to be talking about tonight, the Mamachari, in Japan. And it's very common for people of all ages to ride them. Seeing people riding bicycles who are octogenarians is extremely common. And actually, during the crisis, when other forms of transport were done for quite a while by the destruction, it was the bicycle that was cited as a great lifeline. And the bicycle we'll be talking about, which is so well equipped for not just for commuting, but for everyday use, like a family car, allowed many people to get through that disaster, even in Tokyo. My colleagues were telling me about the long lines of people having to walk home miles after the earthquake struck. And there were people standing in line. Those who didn't have bicycles were standing in line for the last bicycles, just like people perhaps looking for water in a disaster, looking for bicycles as a lifeline. So I think it's a very interesting thing, and I do that as by way of introduction to this lecture. I'm a professor of history officially, but actually my area of study was not just history. It was in the whole area of urban conservation, which brings in urban planning, building technology, cultural landscapes, things of that sort. It's quite a broad field, so I'm very interested in the types of things that you do, and I've not only taught in history departments, but in planning and architecture schools as well. And I did a couple of Fulbrights in Japan, and also some stints teaching for a total of 8 years at the University of Tokyo, Tokyo National University of the Arts. And during that time, I rode this bicycle called the Mamachari. And every molecule of everything in my life that wasn't brought by walking was brought by these bicycles. I will confess, as an American, I rode sports bikes. When I first came to Japan, I brought my sports bike. I did. It was nice. I had a wonderful bike. I actually sold it recently, and now I'm sorry when I moved to Portland because I miss it. And it was hey, you know the drill, turn them off. I don't have much. Start with yourself. All right. Terrible. That wouldn't be good. Where was I? What, the sports bike, yes, thank you. So I brought that ad-libbing is dangerous. The sports bike, I brought it and I found that I wasn't using it much. It couldn't go up curbs. When I needed to bike in tight places, it was a little bit uncomfortable. You know, your leg is over that frame. It worked okay, but it was just, and my neighbor saw me do this and brought me an old Mamachari. She wheeled the thing in and she said, you know, Dozo, would you like to try this? And I thought, look at that old clunker. I wasn't very impressed with it. But after riding it for a while, I used nothing but, and I brought the sports bike back the next time I visited the States. So that was kind of my experience with it. So my latest iteration in Japan was as a Fulbright visiting professor, and then I stayed on for a bit in the Urban Conservation and Design program at the University of Tokyo. This is a wonderful professor, a very flexible fellow, Professor Nishimura, who's quite famous in Japan as an urban conservationist and planner. And at the same time, the building I was living in Tokyo, I noticed out front scenes like this, not just in front of my building, but all over the city. It seemed that almost seemed like there was a war on the Mamachari. This is an area in front of I'm supposed to point with this arrow here. Here's an entrance to the subway and the entrance to my flat, and nice big wide sidewalk and this space right along here to park quite a few bicycles. But they're being scooped up. Matter of fact, all over the city there was sort of an anger war against Mamachari and bicycle parking. And this was also at a time when weren't in quite the difficult age of international relations that we have now, and you know what. And Japan, which is now thinking of becoming more of a global country and militarizing and other things, at that time it was the premier eco country of the world. And the international press was full of stories about amazement in Japan about many of the different devices for saving energy and it being a very eco country. And it was sort of ironic to have this going on at that time. So I got quite curious about it and proposed to my colleagues there for the seminar, well, let's have a Mamachari Zemi. If you can read Japanese up there, it says, that's Todai, Tokyo Daigaku Mamachari Zemi, a Mamachari seminar. And amazingly, several students signed up for this strange thing from China, from Malaysia, from Vietnam, from Japan, Thailand. And we spent quite a bit of time looking at the whole situation, diagramming the efficiency of Mamachari, of bicycle parking, of where it was banned, comparing it to the bicycle situation in the respective countries of the students. And kind of word of this got around. My colleagues, not Nishimura sensei, but some of the others, I think thought it might have been a little strange at first, but they warmed up to be interested in the idea. And then eventually, Japan Newsweek asked me to do an op-ed piece on this phenomena of not so much criticizing, which we do very carefully in Japan, but sort of praising the Mamachari as sort of a miracle of sustainable land use, which I'll explain in a bit. And then this eventually wound into my doing This book, it's a little tiny book, but it would be a much larger book in English. Japanese books are smaller, nice and compact. And the title of the book, which I'll talk about later, but is Seikai ga Shousan shita Nihon no machi no himitsu, which literally translates as Secrets of Japanese Cities the World Admires. Do I like that title? I'm going to talk about that title later and the experience with the book. But today, what I'm going to do is, in the time that's left, is talk a little bit more about the Mamachari and some of its amazing properties as a miracle bicycle, exaggerated, of course. Japan's bicycle neighborhoods and the connection to arguably the world's best, and probably you're experts here, so you'll dispute me. Portland's pretty darn good for its size, I must say, but the world's best and most connected public transit. And finally, looking a little bit at the future of the Mamachari and bicycle neighborhoods. The history, really quickly, is bicycles in Japan were mostly something that men used. During the war, women began riding bicycles. It was just like here, many more women were involved suddenly in defense work and building ordnance and other military equipment, and bicycles were used. After the war, manufacturers started with that to discover that maybe they should be marketing bicycles to women. And this took a while, but by the this is in Kawasaki at Showa 40, so that's what, 1965. I just noticed this picture hanging in the subway of by the 70s and 80s. This is even a little before that. There's a mixture of Mamachari and more conventionally framed bicycles. But as of from the 60s and 70s, there was a tremendous boom in the use of bicycles, not only by women, but more by men and families and everything for everyday everything. So there is my Mamachari. I just came back from Fred Meyer. You notice how nicely the bag fits in the basket. You don't need to have a messenger bag or stuff it in your backpack. It just kind of fits in there. And let's see, I'm going to have to point. Yeah, I guess we want the lights on now. We have technical matters. Is that okay? Technically, I'm also talking to the invisible, wonderful crew behind the wall there. Yeah, is that okay? All right. So what's special about it? Well, the most special thing is you get a complete bicycle. This one is an actual Japanese-made one by Bridgestone. And I just brought it back in November. The reason I got it is not only are they very nice, but it's the only ones that come in a box. They have a way to ship these things with just some wrapping, and they don't even have them in boxes when they're shipped. Bridgestone still ships it in a box. That's why I have a Bridgestone. But you can buy, this one would cost you, with the yen value right now, about $280 maybe US. But you can get wonderful ones made in Japan, Taiwan, China, starting at basically under $100 US for a complete bicycle. Complete. It has a light. It has a reflector on the rear. You have to put your own. A step-through frame. This is one of the key elements. What Americans still call, sometimes you'll see step-through frame girls' bike. In Japan, no girls' bike. Everybody rides it. Men, women, children, old, young. Why? It's slow bicycling. Now, you're not a scorcher. It's extremely comfortable. When you're in a tight space, you just put your feet down. There's a certain comfort. You have a lot of control. It comes with a basket. It comes with a bell. Seat goes up and down. Comes with a sturdy rack that you're not supposed to sit on, but you can actually sit on the thing too. Very, very sturdy. I saw someone in Kyoto carrying a refrigerator on one. It's a little bit out there, but it's amazing what I'll show you in a minute what they can hold. This model is a 3-speed, but you can also get derailleur models. You can get 7-speed ones for $150. What is here a bicycle in the States? These are referred to as Dutch. Some of them are Dutch bikes, city bikes, utility bicycles. They can be $1,000. You get very good ones. I've seen them sold here. But just the idea of having a basic bicycle that can do so many things at a very, very accessible and affordable cost. Also, you can ride it with your street clothes. I did today. I even put it on the bus. It was almost a little too big for the bus, but I got it on there, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure I've missed some of the wonderful features of it. But, one of the most important, two of the most important, and it's something that was sports. Only recently I got my other sports bike, I got a lightweight kickstand put on it, thank God. So you're just not throwing the bicycles all over the place. But it has a wonderful stand, so the thing stays put. And it also has a funny little lock. When I first came to Japan, I wondered, what a funny little lock this is. That can't, a lot of foreigners, you see them writing on the internet, that can't lock anything, that's ridiculous. This little tiny lock that just goes like it won't, of course the spoke is exactly where the lock is, but it's a lock that just goes through the spokes. It's not, in Japan it signals someone owns it. And bicycles do get stolen. It's a way of saying someone owns me, and you can use another lock as well. But it does something else that's quite significant. It locks the wheel, so the darn thing doesn't float all over the place. And those features make it, and I'll show you in a moment, a miracle of sustainable land use. It uses land in an entirely different way and needs much less of an infrastructure in great quantity than bikes that flop all over the place or are not of a fairly uniform consistency. So let's see, where are we? Thank you. Very brave. And I was just when I came here, and that some of the accessories, I looked in some of the sports shops. This very nice little bell is about $10, $12, $1 in Japan. The little light that goes on the back, it seems to be the same one, doesn't have a brand name on it. I don't know if it's the same, and this is maybe a better one, but it's $1, the little light. Little front light's $1 too. It's not a very good one. A wonderful potpourri of adaptations are done in the West for expanding the cargo carrier. Here, for maybe $10, $15, you can get a wonderful basket that fits right on the back. Handlebar, what's it called? Handlebar koba. I think it's handlebar covers in Japanese. I was at an international conference where there was some German visitors, and they were absolutely enthralled. They said, we don't have this in Europe. I've got to bring some of these back. So I went around to the bike stores and got people their handlebar covers for the winter. And there are even electric models. I saw a kind of a very low-end one recently at one of the big electronic discount stores for around $480 US. And I don't know how they compare. I haven't really tried one of the electric bikes here, and they might be more versatile. I have no idea. But here's your power plant. You can get all sorts of varieties of electric Mamachari. And as I said, you can also get them in multiple gears. And so they're almost, they're like the daily cars of Japan in the cities, not everywhere, but in the major cities and a lot of the communities. A lot of Japan is mountains, very mountainous areas where it would be difficult to use that. But most of the population is on the plains of Japan, on former rice fields very often, and it's quite flat, which aids this immensely. But policing, students going to and from school, this is way down in Fukuoka province. The first was in Akihabara in Tokyo. This is in Kawasaki and Kanagawa Ken. Lots of dogs and cats and probably other animals I haven't seen, tigers and lions, who knows. Shopping, everybody uses it to shop. I'll talk about the implications of that in a moment. Farmers to go to the rice fields with their different farming implements, or even I've seen them carry the big bars and vinyl to make vinyl houses, like hot houses that go over the fields. All sorts of things aid the farmers. Mamachari. Recycling. I've seen this in Portland too. I've seen some people, very innovative people, doing very major carrying with their bicycles. But the name Mamachari, which there's a number of theories of the derivations of it. It's not Mamachari. It's not mother's chariot. I've heard charinko, chari. Charinko is the anamana, the sound of the bell. Chang, 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 chang. That's a theory. Someone else says it's has Korean origins. I was never able to trace that down, but the Mamachari is what this bicycle is called in Japan, and one of the most common uses is mothers carrying young children. Often three on a bicycle. Now, some people might wince at that and say it's dangerous. And I'm not going to get into safety issues, except that there was a campaign in the past 5 years to redesign the Mamachari, to lower its center of gravity, to beef up the stand and do a number of improvements, a picture of which I could not find in my rush to do this yesterday, that makes very stable Mamachari that are certified to be able to carry 3 children. And also a law which is kind of good. The helmet thing in slow bicycling is debatable, and I'm not going to get in the safety science of it because you can argue either way, but I think it's a good idea to have helmets on the heads of children, probably, and that's the law now. So hence our friend the Mamachari. And some of the properties I talked about by being a miracle of sustainable land use. This is a typical parking area of Mamachari. It happens to be by the Tabata station in Tokyo. And you can park about 10 of them in the space of one Prius. I sort of measured that, and we worked on that. I mean, you can pick any car you want, an SUV, maybe more, a Cadillac Escalade, maybe, I don't know, 15. But it's very interesting just to think about the land use and implications of bicycle design on land use. Because I don't know how much you study that or not. I assume you do here, and I'd be very interested in your thoughts on it. But it's incredibly efficient, but some of the properties I spoke of is what makes it efficient. If you have to have a lot of non-standard bicycles, you don't have kickstands, don't have spoke locks, you have to have it doesn't matter if you have a low enough density, but you kind of have to hitch them to somewhere. When I came back from Japan, I moved to Portland. I got a bunch of those nice U-locks, and I hitched the bikes up pretty well. Now, moving on to bicycle neighborhoods, a lot of the image sometimes, how many people here have been to Japan, by the way? Yeah, so you know all this. You can comment. But a lot of the kind of image a lot of people have of Japan, and certainly the media, not only the $10 cup of coffee, I think that still persists, or the $150 cab ride for some VIP from the airport when you can just take the train for $10. There's a lot. You can get coffee for $2. There's a lot of myths about Japan. But one of the images is Tokyo is this crowded place. Yes, it's the largest metropolitan agglomeration in the world. There's about 35 million people. Tokyo proper, I think, is around 12 million. But this is the image, I think, of Tokyo as this very crowded, bustling place, which it is. This is Shibuya Crossing, where two great streams of people meet peacefully in both directions. But much of Japanese cities are wonderful, safe, quiet, residential neighborhoods, and a number of which I've lived in. And these are neighborhoods which are very fine-grained and dense. They have narrow streets. They have buildings that are built even in their reincarnations to the scale of a tatami mat, even if you have a more modern one. And this density in fine-grained areas existed way before the popularity of the bicycle. The bicycle neighborhood was not something that a bunch of urban designers decided to design, but coincidentally, the bicycle and this type of neighborhood and this type of bicycle kind of match up pretty well. Just to give you an idea of the density, that's where I live when I'm in Japan, in Kawasaki, and I'm supposed to use this thing here, in this apartment building right there. See that? Thank you, Google. Is that really, can you see that? Look at that. That's great. Just give you a sense of the density we're talking about. Many of these neighborhoods are proximate to shotengai or shopping streets. Sometimes there's demolitions for larger discount stores that are something like not quite like Walmart, but a bit like Walmart or Fred Meyer here, but very compact, but have great bicycle parking and are used more bicycles probably than cars. This is a local neighborhood supermarket in Minowa, in the northeast of Tokyo, and you can see the intensity of bicycle parking. Even Seiyu stores, which is owned in part by Walmart, Walmart knows a lot about bicycle parking in Japan and provides very, very excellent parking for its customers. And so I thought we'd look at, let's see if this works. I'm going to minimize this. Look at that. And then I'm going to click that, and we can just hear for a moment. Got to start at a bicycle neighborhood. Just to get an idea of what it feels like. Let's go back to. And in thinking about these places, having children sitting very proximate to parents, and I did a lot of kind of just anecdotal observing. I don't have a science on it, and I'm not a psychologist. But I see children very much engaged in the neighborhood. I know people ride their children around in Portland too, and I think you would probably say a similar thing, but what's nice is that the children are very close to the parent. So there's a really close, they're not in a trailer, there's a really close interaction, and the children can see life going on and hear what's going on, as opposed to perhaps being in the back of a car where actually, I remember in the 50s when I grew up, the back of the car being this kind of musty material and a rope. They used to still have a lap rope on the back of American cars coming from carriage days. I'm not that old, but there was something. I still have this image of the back seat of a car. I think a child in a car seat, I assume they're even have a very different image. Maybe it's wonderful, but they see the backs of the parents' heads. And then when you get out in a parking lot, you see a parking lot, and then you hear wham, and the door slams. So just thinking about the experiences of children and bicycles, I'm sure you do this to a much larger degree and think about this in your studies. And then the implications of the food chain of parking lot to large store, to large basket, to large trunk, to larger house, to larger refrigerator, to larger food, et cetera, et cetera. There's certainly a connection to that. And in the bicycle neighborhood, the shopping carts, even ones that wheel, just hold some of these shopping baskets, which we have here as well, which are sort of around the same size as this is a little taller. You can get wider ones as well, but it's kind of exchangeable with the bicycle basket or a rear basket. So there are some implications to smaller food, smaller house, smaller space, narrower roads, etc., and able to support or maintain a density. And I sort of talk about in detail in the book, and I don't have time now, but suggesting that just as the tatami mat regulates the scale ultimately, if we were on a trip in Japan, I'd show you this, of a lot of the neighborhoods you can see were scaled somehow to the size of a tatami mat, a lot of the buildings, that the bicycle basket is also a scaling element. Or a maintaining scaling element of neighborhood. And I think it's something worth considering. And it's very interesting. I'm very interested to know the implications in Portland and how that might play out. Moving on, there's always some way to even on there's sprawl in Japan, just as there is in the States. Not anywhere to the extent that we have it. We do better job of it, but. Even in the sprawl, you'll see a lot of use of bicycles. And little things like this, when I pointed out to my Japanese students, was it so ordinary? And I say, look, this is wonderful infrastructure for the Japanese. It's not even on the charts. No one even thinks about it, but many staircases across berms or barriers have a ramp of some sort, just as a matter of course. And then there's the important connection of the bicycle to bicycles and bicycle neighborhoods to the world. And I show this. This was on the internet. It was quite a sensation a few years ago of the Japanese automatic parking garages, where you can take your bicycle and bring it into a kiosk. You put an IC card in, and a machine comes out like some sort of creature with its tongue, and it eats the bicycle, and the bicycle disappears. And then I wish I had that video. And then it goes down into these carousels. I'm sure some of you in your studies have encountered this. There's others around the country. It goes into these carousels, and then you reverse the process when you want your bicycle, and you stick this thing in and spits it out. And you drive away on your Mamachari. But much more typical are lower tech parking garages. Actually, I like them kind of just as much. This is one I used for a number of years in Kawasaki, where just your senior citizen paid bicycle parker. You pay a little money, about $1. And then the bicycle parker takes your bicycle and says, those something, kyoskete, something nice, and then you leave your bicycle with the bicycle parker, and they park it. And in the evening, if you attach something to your Mamachari so you can find it, because it looks like a lot of the others, you kind of look, and then you finally go home on your bicycle. And just in an aside, I've been using the wonderful transit here. I brought my bicycle on the bus. If you're an older person trying to put a bicycle, even a lightweight one, on the max, and that system can be a little backbreaking. But I understand it has to be that way. But you couldn't have, in a low density, if compared to Japan, this is like very small transit, but it's wonderful transit. Believe me. It's wonderful, but you couldn't have, with millions of people riding transit, it would be difficult to be able to have something that you can put a couple of bicycles on. You couldn't do that on a Japanese train. You'd be killed. The bicycle would be crushed. So it's very different places in a different situation. But in Japan, bicycle, the transit system is very, very people accessible. There's people in the system everywhere. Portland is too, by the way. I've never had bus drivers smile and people say thank you. Until I came to Portland, I thought of American Transit as a BART machine somewhere with something scotch taped on with a computer says doesn't work, and 100 people are trying to, you know what I mean. That's what I pictured, no one around to help you. Portland, yay! Very friendly also. Anyway, even at a lowly rural station, there'll be somebody who, an Akito, a station master, to look over things. And you can be in the remotest place in Japan, and somewhere you'll see a bus stop, and there'll be a schedule. Might not have your smartphone. There's probably an app now for that as well. But you can be 6 hours later, you look at the schedule, and you'll wait there. And just on that time, the eyes of the bus appear, and that'll take you. You know that'll take you to a train station most likely, and that a local train will meet an express train perfectly on time, and eventually it'll take you to high-speed rail. Never an accident, best in the world. Fast, high-speed rail, and take you to an airport all over the world. So, a few thoughts quickly on the future of the Mamachari. You can see these two, there's a sports bike rider and a mamachariist going along the sidewalk. In Japan, sports bikes are becoming kind of very fashionable. There's a new word in Japanese, tsukinista, which is a kind of a commuter. And there's a lot, mostly young people in their 20s and 30s, not huge numbers, but in increasing numbers, riding very expensive bicycles, walking the talk and having the right helmets and having the right clothing and all that. It's wonderful because it's adding to the bicycle mix of the country. But what's also fascinating, I used an English quote, this is from Japan Times a few years ago. Sports bikes are the dawn of a new era in cycling. A national push for bicycle riding, if successful in steering people from their cars, will send a powerful message that Japan's taking environmental awareness to the next level. Huh? I showed you, 80+ million mamachari. Here I am in Portland saying, hey, this is part of the mix. Yes, the irony of that is below the radar because it's so familiar. Even urban, and that's some of the problem with dealing with it. It's not seen as a benefit. And I think some public officials, and I hope less of them, even see it as something that looks backward or messy or not attractive for a city. So there's some sort of very interesting disconnect, and you see it again in a lot of imagery on the train or the train stations. The sports bike is always heroic and modern and great, and the mamachari is something you got to clean up as garbage or gomi from the river. There's a children's competition for echo. You go to a shopping street. This is in Kobe. And there's angry seniors and a policeman saying, don't ride your mamachari there, which is a good idea. You should walk it. But a couple of streets down, there's a Buddha saying, please don't bring your car here, nice and kind. It's anecdotal, but you see this again and again. Even with the title of my book, I said I'd get back to that. The first, a couple of major publishers said, "Oh, no one's interested in Mamachari." No. So finally, one publisher did agree to do it, and with the help of my translator, Hattori Keiro at Meiji Gakuin University, and he did agree to do it. And they were very excited about the book, and they thought they'd have a scoop, as was bucking conventional wisdom. And then the head of the publishing company changed as the manuscript, as we had, it was promised to publish it, but as the manuscript was developed, and the new publisher, what? We're doing that? That's who wants to do that? And so they wouldn't, the working title, and all my Japanese colleagues in Japanese and English sort of translation was something to the effect of, "Can Mamachari save the earth?" And so they made Secrets of Cities, the Secrets of Japanese Cities the World Admires. And so you go on Amazon, Japan, you can see all the reviews, say, "Hey, I love the book, but what a weird title. That's not what the book's about." So it's been a little heartbreaking in that sense. Or I'm going to have to catch up and know all the secrets, which I don't at all. But just some more quickly, I was just in Japan. This is about 3 months old. There's a campaign about people do park their bicycles very discourteously, sometimes in front of train stations at block entrances and stuff. Real problem. But the kind of imagery to deal with it, it's dealt with not save a polar bear, do the right thing. It's very, very negative. And look at this. Can you see all these people really angry at somebody parking their Mamachari in the wrong place? And then this really got me scared. I don't know quite what this means, but being assaulted with a smartphone, I assume you, is that a ticket? See, I was assuming because they're speaking. Well, it's interesting. I was assuming that they take your smartphone and are taking a photograph, and then they can email it or something. I don't know, but it gives you a sense of the situation. And I've kind of pointed out sometimes about the need also to curb car clutter, because especially as Americans, if you go out of downtown Portland and you go out to the sprawl, you know that you have to edge around. When you're shopping, you're going between cars and they're blocking everything. But we don't think of that because that's below our horizon. That's too familiar to be thinking about. So it's interesting. But all sorts of places in Tokyo, which I document in the book, that bicycles should be parked and could be parked aren't. This is a place under a bridge in Sugamo. No parking. Why? I even took colleagues on a bicycle planning committee for the ward of Shinjuku, and I had a citizens group out, and we're walking around, and I'd say, they could be parked there. Why is there no parking there? So there's a lot more that could be done with the Mamachari consciousness. Also looked at how, just like if you see a parking lot with a restaurant and there's a lot of cars in front on the road, you might eat there and there's only one car, you might think there's something wrong with it. That a lot of bicycles might attract, another area of research, might attract a sense of busyness in a downtown. This is downtown Kawasaki, and without all those parked bikes, I think it would be a rather empty place. And just wondering, I know that, for example, the Dutch have some problems with abandoned bicycles, but still parked bicycles in Holland or in Portland or anywhere or something. Wow, it's echo. Hey, that's nice. Good. Good. Glad people are riding. Yay. So to try to get that sort of consciousness going. There are some experiments going on. This is one very recently of short-term things of cordoning off to make bike lanes in major streets, and even some permanent ones. This is one in the city of Kawasaki. But sadly, no one listens to it because they're not conditioned. There's so much more I want to say. I'm going to stop in a minute. But I'm amazed at how Portland drivers have somehow been conditioned, and maybe it's you have bad experiences, but so far have been conditioned to pedestrians and drivers. And very interested to know how that psychological change is affected, because there's some real problems in Japan. There's no. You can see here's a bike street. You see people walking on the bike side, and the bike side walking just. Some of the confusion might be is that in the Kansai area of Japan, in Osaka, you're supposed to keep to the left, but in Tokyo you keep to the right. So there's also a total disconnect there. Also, I've noticed, and I go into some psychological studies of this that people have done about spatial awareness. But if you bike in Japan, I don't know if you know, you biked in Japan, and you don't necessarily keep to the left or right. You watch contextually which way someone's wheel is pointing, and you point the other way, rather than here, on your left. Very different. So it's another area I kind of lay out that I'd love to see someone work on. I wish, if it's worth doing. And then in terms of redensification, here's we know that both the sort of new urbanist transportation balloon frame and particle board infill that's going up to redensify areas around stations. Also, this is one of the Japanese versions of redensification is the high-rise. And I might say base-isolated, very seismically safe high-rises. But this is one developer who promotes high-rise development, and the Mamachari neighborhood is just looked at as detritus to be cleared. There's no sense of that. But there are plenty of others, including my colleagues at the University of Tokyo and plenty of citizens groups and designers who feel that that having a safe, dense, horizontal, low-rise city of the types I showed earlier really is the future, is really what should be aiming for. So we have a few minutes, at least 10 minutes for some discussion. And when I came here, it was the first time I'd really been in a great American bicycle city. I'd been living in Santa Fe, and I brought the Mamachari here just in November, just for the heck of it. And some of my American friends said, once you ride, it just has no practicality in a city like Portland. And I first rode the Mamachari. I agreed. No, that's, oh God! I went up a small hill with a 3-speed. And, I was out of shape. I wasn't biking. After 2 months, so I've been actually shopping with it, and I find that my city bike, which has 18 speeds, I think it's 18. Is that the correct amount of speed? Something like that. It's a lot of gears. Is perfect for riding the trails and coming downtown and all of that stuff. But the Mamachari is fantastic for my slow local bicycling. So with that, comments, questions, outrage. Let's see, 1, 2. Do I have to do? I wish I had a moderator. This is okay. 1. I think I have the order. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
I think you mentioned, so a bike like that sells for about $280.
That one, that's an expensive one. Yeah, you can get them as little as $100 US, $120.
Just for some context, so curiously, how much would say a rice lunch or like a bus trip cost in Japan?
The bus trip, it depends, but the bus trip is about the same as here. It's a little over $2, a little cheaper than here, for a one shot. Japan is a Suica system. It's using IC cards, and it's one card can work in most all over Japan, and it automatically deducts stuff.
I'm amazed how cheap the bikes can be and still be a decent quality.
A comparable bike here, I've seen really, better, beautiful ones. I don't want to knock the local bike industry, but so-called utility bikes can be $1,000. So what is the implication of, would there be more bike riders? I haven't been here in the summer. Anecdotally, most of the bike riders I see look between 20 and 45, and some people like me. But I suspect in the summer that's very different. That there's more old people, there's more children riding bicycles. Yeah. Sorry to go on. Yes, please.
There's an element to the Mamachari there that you didn't point out.
Okay.
But we don't have these in Portland, at least as far as I've been able to see, and that is the skirt guard.
Thank you. That is the skirt. Absolutely, it's a plastic skirt guard. I'm sorry. It is very valuable. It's valuable enough. There's people also, you can get an umbrella attachment. But that's illegal now to use umbrellas. Everybody still does, but it's not legal. I should mention that. But keeps your skirt out of the spoke. Yeah.
Well, this is not. Can you point on the picture?
Sorry. There it is. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Brakes. So I hope your pants wouldn't go up there.
Well, if you're wearing like yoga pants.
Here, where it's not the chain guard. Not the chain guard.
Yeah,
there's a lace, a lattice of plastic here. That's the skirt guard. Thank you very much. Also, there's a really nice cover, so you don't have to roll up your pant leg. It's really nice. This morning I was in a rush with this lecture, and I got the Mamachari and off. With my other bike, it's a little more complicated, but still nice. Yes.
3 and 4. In the very beginning, you showed a picture of these Mamacharis being, let's say, taken away. And are the owners able to go back and repossess their own bikes? And how do they?
Sort of, yeah. They have impoundment lots. And this is one of the issues some people raise about having cheap bikes, to be fair, is that a lot of people shikattaganai, and there's nothing that can be done. Who cares? In Japanese, you get another one. But there are impoundment lots where you can get them, and a lot of them are exported as a treasure. I've seen a lot of commentary on the internet of people in other countries, like Cambodia, African countries, who are delighted to have very high-quality bikes. So a lot of them, there might even be an incentive to scoop them up. I don't know. I can't say that, but I know that the cities will sell them off to jobbers to other countries as well. Yes, sir.
So the bike industry in Japan is very well protected. So there are import duties of like 60 or 150% sometimes, or bicycles are made in China. So that keeps the made in Japan bikes much cheaper. That's why you can have $100 or 100,000 yen bike.
Actually, though, the most of those $100 bikes, there might be 130 now. I think you can still get a $100 bike. It probably wouldn't have a rear stand, but they're made. A lot of them are made in China. The Japanese ones are a higher price point. This, as I said, this is a Japanese one by Bridgestone and is around 200. I paid about sanman yen, which is about $280 or something like that now, roughly.
The U.S. also has import duty, so like it's 11.5% for a complete bike. It's 6% for a frame. It's 30% for a computer or certain headlights. You know, if you want a dynamo hub, it's 10%. But if it's a non-dynamo hub, it's 0%. So it's this really weird matrix of.
So that's some of what's raising those prices versus what we're talking. This has a dynamo hub, by the way. Yeah, just kind of cool. And the bell. Are you in the bike business?
Yeah, I used to be.
Yeah. No, I was very curious about that. But there's also these stuff you can get in what they call a hyakuren store, which is equivalent to the dollar store.
Yeah.
Some of it. I don't know if it's good quality, but that explains. Sure, that explains some of it. I don't know if it explains all of it from the prices that you're talking about with import duties. In my case, I had this box, and my friend and I got this at a little shop. I was going to show you a picture, and then we took it upstairs, and then we got one of the Takubin or delivery services to bring it to Narita Airport. And then I worried about whether they'd fit it on the plane, because it was one of the smaller planes, but they said it would fit. And then I got it delivered here. And then Kai at the Upcycles near my neighborhood, if he's here, I don't know if he made it here, but he assembled it. He was so interested. He said, "Oh, be a few days," and then the next day it's done. He was fascinated. He was fascinated with it. But when I went through customs, I had this thing, and I expected, oh, there's a duty. You got da 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 da. Hi, hey, yeah, that's Japanese bike. Oh, wow. You know. But that was for one, and it was under the $700 or $800 limit.
Yeah.
You know.
That for PDX, if you go to like say Chicago, you might have a completely different experience with customs and bicycles.
I love PDX.
I could. There's a few other things I think there's some structural issues we have here in the U.S.
Yeah.
As opposed to Japan with bicycle security and theft.
Oh, yeah.
And there's $2 million to $4 million worth of bicycles stolen every year in this city alone.
What would be the implications of? I wonder what the implications would be of having. I mean, how many license plates get stolen in Portland? I know there's a lot of cars stolen, but what?
Very few plates get stolen
Yeah.
in Portland.
Because license, even in Detroit, probably very few license plates. I know I'm on TV, so I'm not staying at maybe. Because it's such a familiar thing that people don't steal. It's just, you don't even see them. So I wonder if some of the thing of having the ubiquitous bicycle that's all the same, if it becomes so familiar that less of them get stolen. I don't know. Certainly Mamachari gets stolen. Question? I would love to talk to you more about that, about the technical details of that time. I'd be very interested. Yes, please.
Has there been any work on making the bikes more transit-friendly or making the transit more bike-friendly, or is that covered by bike shares? And how does the overall bike share industry, what percentage is Mamachari for, what percentage is other types of bikes?
I don't have a statistic now. I did this work a couple of years ago on. There are some bike shares in Japan. Way before that, you could just rent a Mamachari at the station. You didn't need that infrastructure. You could just rent one, and then you bring it back, which is kind of cool too. But there's some bike share, but the bike share infrastructure needs a lot of room, and it takes up a lot of urban space. So it might have some implications. I know Yokohama, I saw some, I believe, which has very wide streets and stuff. But I think that's something to consider. And also owning your own private bicycle, bringing it to the station, and using transit is a different paradigm. I don't think I answered your total question. Oh, another thing is that they did have a bike share experiment at the University of Tokyo in front of my building. It was the Washington system. I forgot the exact name of it. And they were more like cruiser bikes. When I say cruiser bikes, a big, more heavy kind of things. And they didn't use the Mamachari model. But in the Vélib in France, for example, those are sort of Mamachari-like bikes. So there's also an issue of what type of bike for your bike share, and whether it has a basket and whether it has those features. Do you have more to say on bike shares, please?
I was just wondering if that was possibly, if there was a gender implication there that the Mamacharis would be used, would be less common in bike shares because of, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, I couldn't really theorize as to why, but
I sort of doubt it, but it's I don't know the. I sort of doubt it, because it's just so easy to own your own bicycle and then use it for local use and then use transit and get on a train and park the thing and be rid of it. But you're also dealing in a different scale of place, a place like Portland or even New York. We're out of time. I'm sorry. If you want to ask me privately, you're very welcome to do that. I'm sorry.
So before we thank Professor Liebs, for next week we have Dr. Alex Bigazzi coming to talk about cyclist exposure to air pollution risk. So with that, let's thank